They thought they could steal 2,000 acres of my family's ranch through an illegal HOA sale. So, I legally foreclosed on every single one of their McMansions. I'm standing on what used to be my front porch, holding foreclosure notices for 12 houses in the fancy subdivision next door. The wind whistles through bay fence posts where my grandfather's oak trees once stood, carrying the acrid scent of diesel fuel from the construction equipment that destroyed everything. 6 months ago, I owned the largest cattle spread in 3 counties. Today, I own their mortgage companies. But here's what they didn't know about me when HOA President Karen Blackwell decided to play games with my family's legacy. What would you do if someone stole your great-grandfather's homestead and poisoned your well water to cover their tracks? Right now, Karen's living in a studio apartment above the town's only subway, wondering how a simple cowboy managed to turn her million-dollar empire into a federal crime scene. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because this story proves that sometimes the little guy can win, if you understand how the system really works. Stick around, because I'm about to show you exactly how to turn the tables on corrupt authority using their own weapons against them. My name is Jake Morrison, and I'm the 3rd generation to work this land in Clearwater County, Montana. My grandfather bought these 2,000 acres in 1952 with his GI Bill money. Rolling hills perfect for cattle, with a creek running through the heart of it that has never run dry. Every morning for 34 years, I've started my day with coffee on the wraparound porch, listening to meadowlarks singing over the sound of cattle lowing in the distance. It's the kind of peace you can't buy in any city. The ranch was struggling. Sure, my divorce 2 years ago didn't help the finances, and my 8-year-old daughter, Emma, only visits every other weekend now, but we were breaking even with our organic beef operation, a small but loyal customer base who appreciated knowing exactly where their food came from. Then Karen Blackwell moved in next door. Picture this, perfectly coiffed blonde bob, always wearing designer athleisure that probably cost more than my monthly feed bill, driving a white BMW X5 she kept spotless despite living in ranch country. Karen and her tech executive husband, Brad, had cashed out of Phoenix after his company went public and decided rural Montana would be their personal playground. She was the self-appointed HOA president of Clearwater Meadows Estates, a new subdivision of McMansions built on what used to be the Henderson family farm. Our first meeting set the tone immediately. She showed up unannounced on a Tuesday morning, her manicured nails tapping impatiently against my weathered wooden fence post while I finished feeding the cattle. "Those feeding stations are an eyesore," she announced without so much as a hello. "They're visible from our neighborhood and, frankly, they're lowering our property values." I explained politely that my ranch had been here 70 years before her subdivision existed and even offered to plant some privacy trees if it bothered her that much. Her response: "Trees take too long to grow. You need to relocate your agricultural activities somewhere less visible." The woman had been in Montana for all of 3 months, and she was telling me to hide my cattle operation. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Karen escalated from complaints to demands, and then to outright threats. The HOA sent official letters about noise violations. Apparently, my roosters crowing at dawn were disturbing their beauty sleep. They complained to the county about unpleasant odors and undesirable wildlife my ranch attracted. Every reasonable solution I offered got shot down. When I suggested moving the roosters further from the property line, Karen's response was a cease and desist letter from some fancy attorney claiming my entire operation was an agricultural nuisance. Standing in my barn that day, reading that legal threat while Karen's expensive perfume clashed with the honest smell of hay and leather, I should have seen what was coming. This wasn't about noise complaints or property values. This was about Karen wanting my land, and she was willing to destroy my family's legacy to get it. The real wake-up call came on a crisp October morning when I discovered surveyors on my property without permission. When I confronted them, they flashed paperwork claiming a 47-acre strip along our shared border actually belonged to the HOA's common area. Karen appeared like she'd been waiting in the wings, clutching a questionable survey from 1978 that showed property lines completely at odds with every other document I'd ever seen. The kicker: my grandfather's original deed, the one that clearly proved the Morrison family owned every acre, had mysteriously vanished from the county records. "Sometimes paperwork gets misplaced over the decades," Karen said with a smile that made my skin crawl. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a difficult neighbor. I was dealing with a predator. Karen didn't waste time. Within a week, the HOA filed an adverse possession claim on those 47 acres, citing community use of the land for hiking trails. Turns out they'd been secretly maintaining trails and placing benches on my property for 2 years, sneaky as foxes, all while I was away on supply runs. Here's the legal technicality that almost tripped me up. Montana adverse possession requires only 5 years of continuous use, but Karen's lawyers claimed that their substantial improvements accelerated the timeline. A judge even granted a temporary restraining order preventing me from removing their trails or benches. Suddenly, I couldn't touch my own land. But Karen made her first mistake by getting too clever. While researching their claims, I discovered that Brad, her husband, owned the surveying company that had produced that convenient 1978 survey. Late-night internet searches became my new hobby, fingers clicking through records while coffee grew cold on the kitchen table. That's when I found the Arizona State Licensing Board had cited the same surveying company for, you guessed it, fraudulent boundary surveys. Here's your first knowledge nugget. Adverse possession claims require hostile, open, notorious, and continuous use of property. Secret trail maintenance done while the owner is away doesn't qualify because it's not open and notorious. I had ammunition, but Karen was only getting started with her pressure campaign. The local newspaper ran a puff piece about the HOA's community beautification efforts, complete with a photo of Karen and her neighbors posing proudly on their hiking trail. The newspaper caption praised their responsible land stewardship on my grandfather's property. Then the anonymous threat arrived. A note slipped under my windshield wiper. Sell out, or we'll make your life hell. Suddenly, the local dynamics shifted. The hardware store owner, a HOA member, refused to extend my usual credit. The veterinarian who treated my cattle for 15 years doubled her ranch call fees overnight. It's remarkable how quickly neighbors can turn into strangers when money is involved. But I wasn't completely alone. During one of my trips to the county clerk's office, elderly Mabel whispered something that changed everything. That woman's been in here an awful lot, asking about old surveys. Digging through dusty file boxes, papers crackling between my calloused fingers, I discovered a pattern. 3 other longtime landowners near Clearwater Meadows had quietly sold to developers after facing similar legal pressure. The real bombshell. Karen had requested copies of the Morrison family deed 6 months before filing her adverse possession claim. This wasn't opportunism. This was premeditated. I scraped together my last savings to hire an attorney in Helena who specialized in property rights. Best money I ever spent. She located my grandfather's original 1952 deed in the state archives, clear as daylight, showing that every acre of the 2,000 belonged to the Morrison family. We filed a motion to dismiss Karen's claim and demanded attorney fees. Karen's response was pure desperation masquerading as righteous anger. She showed up at my ranch with the county sheriff, claiming I'd threatened her during our last conversation. Sheriff Thompson, who knew my family for decades, simply explained that discussing property boundaries wasn't illegal. As Karen stormed off, she hissed, "This isn't over, cowboy." She was right about that, but she had no idea what she'd just started. Next, Karen pulled out the neighborhood dictator playbook. The HOA voted to assess every member $5,000 for a legal defense fund to fight my frivolous lawsuit. 43 families were on the hook. That's over $200,000 aimed at crushing a single rancher defending his land. But Karen didn't stop there. Rumors spread that my cattle were diseased, triggering a state agriculture inspection. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from inspectors, while Emma asked why her dad seemed so worried. The cattle were perfectly healthy, of course, but the inspection cost me a week of lost work and veterinary fees I couldn't afford. Then came late-night sabotage worthy of a mafia enforcer. Fences were cut under the cover of darkness, letting cattle wander onto neighboring properties. I'd wake up to angry calls from other ranchers, then spend hours rounding up confused livestock and mending wire. Trail cameras revealed the truth. HOA members were sneaking onto my ranch on ATVs, deliberately cutting fence lines to create cattle trespass incidents. The acrid scent of fresh-cut wire and diesel exhaust from their midnight raids became a regular morning discovery. Karen filed complaints with the county about my inability to control livestock. Sheriff Thompson, under pressure from his superiors, had no choice but to issue citations, $500 per incident, and yet the incidents kept happening. Knowledge nugget number 2. criminal mischief charges apply to intentional property damage. Even if individual incidents seem minor, if the total damage exceeds $1,500, it becomes a felony in most states. While documenting Karen's fence-cutting operation, I discovered that her husband Brad had been flying drones over my property, claiming it was for surveying work. The problem? Brad didn't have a commercial drone license. One FAA complaint later, and the aerial surveillance stopped. Karen wasn't finished. Her financial pressure campaign escalated. The local bank president, guess which subdivision he lived in, suddenly called my ranch loan and demanded immediate payment. My feed supplier refused delivery unless I paid cash up front. My insurance company canceled my liability policy after anonymous complaints about dangerous conditions on the property. Sitting at my kitchen table, hands shaking as I counted cash for cattle feed while my daughter's college fund dwindled, I realized Karen's strategy: death by 1,000 cuts. She couldn't steal my land directly, so she would bankrupt me into selling. Emma, 8 years old, asked why we couldn't go to Dairy Queen like we used to. She was watching her dad's world crumble under a neighbor's greed. But Karen made a crucial mistake. She was too predictable. While researching her background for the federal civil rights lawsuit my attorney suggested, I found newspaper archives from Phoenix describing identical tactics against a Hispanic family who had owned a small farm for generations. The pattern was unmistakable: harassment, legal pressure, financial strangulation, followed by a below-market buyout offer at the family's most desperate moment. Knowledge nugget number 3. Pattern harassment can support federal civil rights violations under 42 U.S.C. Section 1985, conspiracy to deprive citizens of equal protection. Systematic targeting based on economic status or rural lifestyle counts as discrimination. The Phoenix articles reveal that Brad's development company had purchased 3 family farms at 40% below market value after similar harassment campaigns. This wasn't personal vendetta, it was business strategy. My attorney filed harassment charges in a federal civil rights complaint. Local media picked up the story. David versus Goliath, rancher fights HOA land grab. Her response was swift and vicious. I received an eviction notice claiming my ranch violated county health codes, followed by the most devastating blow yet. Someone poisoned my stock tank, killing 3 cattle and requiring emergency treatment for the survivors. $8,000 in veterinary bills. And the message was clear: intimidation works, unless you fight back. This had gone far beyond a property dispute. This was war. Karen decided to deploy her nuclear option. She dug up an obscure 1962 county ordinance requiring agricultural operations to maintain $2 million in liability insurance. Since my policy had mysteriously been cancelled, this long-dormant law suddenly became grounds for shutting down my entire ranch. Sheriff Thompson arrived at dawn with a cease and desist order. All cattle had to be removed within 72 hours, or the county would seize them for public safety violations. I stood on my porch, watching Emma cry as I explained we might lose everything, while meadowlarks sang obliviously nearby. It felt like David facing Goliath with a broken slingshot. Karen made her most revealing move yet. She offered to help by purchasing the ranch at 40% of market value. Generous, considering your legal troubles, she said with that predatory smile. The woman was literally profiting from the crisis she had created. Meanwhile, the community turned against me faster than milk spoils in summer heat. The local newspaper ran an editorial supporting the HOA's property rights, quoting concerned citizens worried about my so-called vendetta. The town council meeting was packed with Clearwater Meadows residents demanding my ranch be permanently closed. Former friends avoided my gaze as my worn boots echoed through the empty hall. My only supporter was Mabel from the county clerk's office, whispering, "Keep digging, hun," as I sat alone in the back row, watching neighbors treat me like a pariah. But desperation breeds discovery. While researching the 1962 ordinance, I found something Karen hadn't counted on. The law was originally written to target Native American ranching operations and had been ruled unconstitutional in 1978. The ruling had never been formally added to county records, but federal law trumped local ordinances. Knowledge nugget: discriminatory laws remain invalid even if not formally repealed. They can be challenged under the Equal Protection Clause. A civil rights attorney in Billings agreed to take my case pro bono after recognizing the historical discrimination pattern. While building my constitutional challenge, I stumbled onto another bombshell: Clearwater Meadows HOA had never filed proper incorporation papers with the state. Karen had been collecting fees and issuing fines without any legal authority. $340,000 in HOA accounts were actually under her personal control. Another nugget: operating a fake HOA is wire fraud if fees are collected across state lines, a federal felony with a 20-year maximum sentence. Karen wasn't done. My well water suddenly tested positive for industrial chemicals. The source: illegal dumping from Clearwater Meadows construction runoff directly into the aquifer. This EPA violation could shut down the entire development. Her frantic settlement offer made sense: $500,000 cash if I signed an NDA and moved away. I pretended to consider the offer while my attorney documented everything for federal authorities. Karen thought she was buying my silence. Instead, she was confessing to environmental crimes on tape. Finally, the Regional Cattlemen's Association stepped up with a legal defense fund, and Emma's teacher organized a barbecue fundraiser, filling my property with the smell of smoke, grilled meat, and community support. For the first time in months, I wasn't fighting alone. Brad, Karen's husband, made one final, fatal mistake. He approached me at the contaminated well, our symbolic location, and offered $2 million cash with no NDA required. "You can't buy back your crimes," I told him, unaware my attorney had advised me to wear a wire. Brad's response: "We know people who can make you disappear." That recording became federal evidence of witness intimidation. The next morning, someone shot out my ranch house windows, leaving a dead coyote on the porch with a note: "You're next." Emma stayed with her grandmother for safety while I loaded my shotgun, preparing for what felt like the biggest fight of my life. That's when Mabel from the county clerk's office made a move that changed everything. She called me at midnight, nervous but resolute, asking me to meet her at the office before dawn. In a dusty box marked Misfiled Documents 1999 to 2000, she showed me the original HOA incorporation papers for Clearwater Meadows. Except they had never actually been filed. Karen had listed herself as the sole managing member with unlimited authority over community funds. Most residents had signed blank signature pages at what they thought was a welcome party. They never saw the actual bylaws giving Karen dictatorial control. The kicker came when my forensic accountant friend analyzed the HOA bank records obtained through legal discovery. Of the $340,000 collected in fees and fines, only $50,000 had been spent on actual community improvements. The remaining $290,000 had been funneled straight to Clearwater Development, LLC, Brad's company. Knowledge nugget: embezzlement of HOA funds is prosecutable under state theft statutes. Automatic felony for amounts over $1,500 in most jurisdictions. The financial web ran even deeper. Karen's insurance claims against neighboring properties, including my ranch, were completely fabricated. The same Phoenix insurance adjuster had handled every claim. And, of course, she was Karen's college roommate. Every accident, every property damage incident had been staged. Trail cameras and security footage from my ranch proved HOA members had orchestrated these fake scenarios. Then came the political corruption that made Karen's scheme possible. The county commissioner who supported the anti-ranch ordinance had received a $25,000 consulting fee from Brad's development company. The judge who granted Karen's original restraining order held shares in Clearwater Development LLC purchased below market rates. Another nugget: public corruption cases often lead to RICO charges. Racketeering convictions carry a maximum 20-year sentence. The environmental cover-up was the smoking gun. EPA testing revealed that Karen's development had illegally disposed of construction waste directly into my aquifer. Contamination levels were 50 times the legal limit, affecting the drinking water for the entire township. Karen knew about it. Hidden environmental impact reports showed she had received warnings 6 months prior but chose to conceal the evidence rather than pay for proper disposal. Cleanup costs were estimated at $2 million, with Karen's development company liable for every penny. More importantly, intentional environmental contamination carried federal criminal charges that couldn't be negotiated away. Standing in that government office at sunrise, surrounded by evidence of fraud, corruption, and environmental crimes, I realized something crucial: Karen's entire empire was built on quicksand. Every source of her power, political connections, legal authority, community support, was based on lies and criminal activity. But she still had expensive lawyers and corrupt officials shielding her. I needed a way to expose everything at once in a forum she couldn't control or suppress. That's when I remembered the upcoming county fair. Every year, the fair included a public forum on community development where residents could voice concerns about local issues. It was broadcast live on local TV and radio with standing room-only crowds. Karen would never expect a simple cowboy to understand her criminal enterprise well enough to explain it publicly. She'd grown so arrogant, so confident in her ability to manipulate the system, that she never considered someone might fight back using her own tactics. The plan was simple: use the county fair's public forum to present irrefutable evidence of Karen's crimes to the entire community simultaneously, making it impossible for corrupt officials to suppress the truth or for Karen to spin the narrative. I had 3 weeks to prepare a presentation that would expose a multi-million-dollar criminal conspiracy and bring down the most powerful person in the county. Assembling my team felt like putting together the Avengers, if the Avengers specialized in taking down corrupt HOAs instead of alien invasions. The civil rights attorney from Billings brought constitutional law expertise and a burning hatred for discrimination. The environmental lawyer from Denver had made a career out of holding corporations accountable for water contamination. A former FBI agent turned private investigator knew exactly how to document criminal evidence that would stand up in federal court. But the real secret weapon was my forensic accountant friend from college, a guy who could trace money through more shell companies than a Russian oligarch. He broke down Karen's financial maze in terms even I could understand. She had created 5 separate LLCs, all controlled by Brad, to hide money moving between HOA fees and personal accounts. It was like a criminal shell game, but with paper trails. The legal strategy was beautifully simple: hit them with everything at once. Simultaneous federal and state charges, including RICO, environmental crimes, and public corruption. A civil rights lawsuit under Section 1985 for conspiracy to deprive constitutional rights. Knowledge nugget: RICO allows seizure of all assets obtained through criminal enterprise. That includes personal homes purchased with stolen funds. We also filed an environmental lawsuit seeking an immediate injunction to stop all development activity, plus a class action on behalf of HOA members defrauded by Karen's fake organization. Gathering evidence became my full-time job. My security cameras had captured 6 months of harassment, trespassing, and property destruction. Financial records traced a clear money trail from HOA accounts to personal enrichment. Environmental testing proved intentional contamination and cover-up. Testimony from Phoenix victims established Karen's pattern of discrimination and fraud. The technical challenge was translating complex crimes into language everyday people could understand. The environmental engineer mapped the contamination plume. Industrial runoff from their construction site flowed directly into Morrison Ranch's aquifer. This was no accident. Knowledge nugget: environmental crimes carry strict liability. Intent doesn't matter, only that contamination occurred and the defendant was responsible. My private investigator used cell phone data to track Karen's movements. She had been on Morrison property 47 times without permission. Clear evidence of stalking behavior. Meanwhile, we realized other HOA members were victims, too. Many elderly residents feared retaliation but were willing to testify if protected. Final knowledge nugget: whistleblower protection laws shield HOA members who report financial fraud. Retaliation against them is a separate federal crime. Support came from unexpected places. The Regional Cattlemen's Association provided legal defense funds and media support. Environmental groups joined our lawsuit, seeing precedent for protecting rural water rights. Even my daughter Emma got involved, coaching me on speaking clearly like she did at school while I practiced my presentation. Learning PowerPoint at 34 felt like teaching a dinosaur to text, but my calloused hands slowly mastered the keyboard. The environmental lawyer prepared court papers for an immediate injunction if Karen tried to flee. We installed professional recording equipment at the county fair venue because everything had to be captured perfectly. The media strategy was critical: document everything for maximum public impact, time the revelation when most community members would be present, and prepare evidence packets for the State Attorney General, FBI, and EPA simultaneously. Social media would show before and after photos of environmental damage that spoke louder than any speech. But the personal cost was crushing. My savings were gone. The ranch mortgage to pay legal fees. Emma asking why Daddy looked so tired broke my heart every time. My ex-wife threatened to seek full custody due to the unstable situation. I survived on stale coffee and pizza boxes scattered across the dining table, papers covering every surface like a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. Final preparations included dry runs of my presentation, timing everything for maximum impact. Backup plans were ready if Karen tried to disrupt the county fair or flee the jurisdiction. Everything was set for the public confrontation that would expose Karen's crimes to the entire community. 3 years of harassment, 6 months of legal warfare, and countless sleepless nights had led to this moment. Karen wasn't going down without a fight. She discovered I was preparing something big through an HOA member who worked at the copy shop where I'd been printing evidence packets. Her response was swift and desperate. A break-in at my attorney's office, searching for legal documents that could reveal our strategy. Security cameras caught Brad rifling through file cabinets at 2 a.m., but the corrupted local police claimed there was insufficient evidence for charges. Amazing how camera footage becomes blurry when it's inconvenient for the wrong people. Karen's smear campaign went nuclear. Social media posts portrayed me as a dangerous loner obsessed with conspiracy theories. She created a fake GoFundMe claiming she needed protection from her stalker neighbor, complete with staged photos of her looking frightened. Local Facebook groups flooded with Karen supporters, posting concerns about public safety and demanding I be banned from the county fair. Anonymous threatening calls started arriving faster than telemarketers during election season. My phone buzzed constantly with distorted voices, each one promising violence if I didn't back off. Emma, asking why people were being mean to Daddy, nearly broke my resolve. But quitting wasn't an option, not when we were this close to exposing the truth. Karen convinced the county commissioner to increase security at the fair, hoping armed guards would intimidate me into silence. She spread rumors that I was mentally unstable and planning violence at the public forum. Anonymous calls to Child Protective Services claimed I was an unfit parent due to paranoid behavior. Her desperation led to her biggest mistake yet. More of my cattle died from contaminated water. The veterinarian confirmed industrial poisoning spreading through the aquifer. My well became completely unusable, forcing my family to buy bottled water for basic needs while neighbors still drank from poison sources. EPA testing confirmed contamination spreading to other properties. But Karen's response revealed how far she had fallen. She actually claimed I had poisoned my own well for sympathy and legal advantage. She accused me of killing my own livestock and contaminating my family's drinking water just to profit from lawsuits. The legal harassment escalated further. Karen's attorneys filed frivolous lawsuits for defamation, harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Each case drained time, money, and energy, a legal death by 1,000 cuts designed to exhaust my resources before trial. The stack of papers on my kitchen table grew so high that Emma started organizing them by color with crayons, turning my legal nightmare into her art project. Kids have a way of finding light even in the darkest situations. Then the corruption went deeper than I'd imagined. The county judge, a known Karen ally, granted a restraining order so broad it prevented me from communicating with HOA members. The order was deliberately vague, making it illegal for me to document crimes or interview witnesses. Sheriff Thompson served the papers with a smug smile. Maybe you should just sell and move on. While I was legally muzzled, Karen's husband began construction on my disputed 47 acres. Despite ongoing litigation, bulldozers arrived at dawn, destroying century-old oak trees my grandfather had planted. Standing on my porch, watching heritage timber fall while powerless to stop it, felt like watching vandals desecrate a cemetery. Yet my allies continued gathering evidence despite the restraining order. The private investigator documented Brad's illegal construction activity. The environmental lawyer filed emergency motions to stop the destruction. Destroying potential crime scenes during litigation could count as obstruction of justice, a separate felony that only added to their growing criminal liability. Karen made one last attempt to control the narrative. She showed up at Emma's school, claiming to be a concerned citizen reporting an unsafe home environment. Fortunately, the principal wasn't an HOA member and politely escorted her off the property. The message was clear: nowhere was safe from her reach. Anonymous letters sent to my customers claimed my beef was contaminated, causing me to lose 60% of my client base overnight. The acrid smoke of burned hate mail mixed with sage outside, a tangible reminder of the evil polluting Montana's clean air. Karen offered one last settlement, $100,000 and an NDA to prevent any discussion of HOA activities. We met at a neutral diner in the neighboring town. Both sides arrived at the diner with attorneys and court reporters in tow. Karen believed she controlled the situation. "Take this deal or lose everything. Your ranch, your daughter, your reputation," she threatened. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of confidence. "See you at the county fair," I said calmly. Her face cracked with uncertainty. This cowboy wasn't backing down. Karen's nuclear response came at 5 a.m. with a call from my attorney. She'd filed an emergency petition to have me declared mentally incompetent, claiming my obsessive behavior and paranoid accusations proved I was dangerous to myself and others. The petition included doctored social media posts and fake witness statements from HOA members, all designed to silence me before the county fair. The hearing was scheduled for the day before the fair. No coincidence. She was trying to declare me legally insane so nothing I said would carry weight with the community. She didn't stop there. My ex-wife simultaneously filed for emergency full custody, citing the unstable living situation at the ranch. Later, I discovered Karen had been secretly paying my ex-wife's attorney fees through one of her shell companies. Scheduling both hearings on the same day was a brilliant but cruel strategy, destroy my credibility and isolate me on the eve of my biggest fight. The media assassination was equally meticulous. The local newspaper ran a front-page story portraying me as a troubled rancher waging a personal vendetta against the community. Anonymous sources claimed I had threatened violence at the county fair, accompanied by photos of me looking disheveled after months of sleepless nights. Karen was quoted as a reluctant spokesperson concerned for community safety. Regional TV news picked up the story, portraying me as an unstable extremist bent on revenge. Political pressure reached absurd levels. County commissioners called an emergency meeting to address public safety concerns, debating whether to cancel the fair's public forum entirely. Karen's supporters packed the room, demanding I be banned from public events. I sat alone in the back row while former friends avoided eye contact as if I carried a contagious disease. Then came the final escalation, an anonymous bomb threat against the fairgrounds, conveniently blamed on my inflammatory rhetoric. She was literally framing me for terrorism just to prevent a PowerPoint presentation. But Karen's financial strangulation was her cruelest move yet. The bank foreclosed on my ranch mortgage, claiming I had violated terms by creating a public nuisance. Sheriff Thompson arrived with eviction papers. 48 hours to vacate 70 years of Morrison family land. The real twist revealed Karen's desperation. My attorney discovered the mortgage had been sold to one of her shell companies just a week before the foreclosure. She was literally buying my debt to seize my land, then immediately submitting a purchase offer at the auction. My legal team rallied like cavalry in a classic Western. The civil rights attorney filed an emergency federal injunction to halt the foreclosure. The environmental lawyer got the EPA to designate my ranch a potential Superfund site, legally preventing any sale. Meanwhile, the forensic accountant traced the money used to purchase my mortgage back to stolen HOA funds, further proof of Karen's criminal enterprise. Karen's desperation reached cartoon villain levels when she tried to bribe my attorney to withdraw from the case. The conversation was recorded as evidence of witness tampering. Then Brad approached me directly at the contaminated well, the symbolic location for a final threat. "We know people who can make you disappear," he said, forgetting I was wearing a wire. That recording became federal evidence of witness intimidation. Karen wasn't finished. The night before the county fair, someone shot out my ranch house windows and left a dead coyote on the porch with a threatening note. Emma stayed with her grandmother while I loaded my shotgun and checked every door and window, surviving on zero sleep before the biggest day of my life. Every creak of settling boards made me jump, but I refused to back down. Morning arrived with a sense of a normal county fair, funnel cake, hay, livestock, and diesel generators. I arrived early to set up my presentation, despite the death threats. Karen arrived with private security, claiming credible threats, and the media swarmed, drawn by the manufactured controversy. Federal agents quietly took positions in the crowd, tipped off by my attorney that today was the day Karen's criminal empire would collapse. The livestock pavilion was packed beyond capacity, 300 community members squeezed into space meant for 200, with overflow crowds watching from outside. The forum began with Karen taking the microphone first, playing the victim card like a seasoned politician. "I'm here today because I've been the target of an unhinged neighbor's harassment campaign," she said, her voice cracking with practiced emotion. She produced fake medical records claiming stress-related health problems from my supposed stalking behavior, complete with doctor statements that were probably as genuine as her concern for the community. Murmurs of sympathy rippled through the audience while Karen dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I sat calmly in the back row, federal agents discreetly positioned throughout the crowd like invisible guardians. Karen had no idea she was about to walk straight into the most elegant legal trap in Montana history. When my turn came, I walked to the podium with the confidence of a man holding 4 aces. My opening line was simple: "I'm going to show you documents. You decide what they mean." First slide: my grandfather's original 1952 deed, crystal clear, proving the Morrison family owned every disputed acre. The audience leaned forward, eyes glued to the projection screen, their interest growing with every detail. Second slide: Karen's forged 1978 survey, with signatures that didn't match county records. I let the evidence speak for itself. The murmurs shifted from sympathy for Karen to confusion, then to anger. "Forging government documents is a federal felony," I said calmly. "Each signature represents a separate crime." The real bombshell came with slide 3, bank statements showing how Karen had collected $340,000 in illegal HOA fees. Transfers from community funds went directly into her personal accounts. Gasps echoed through the crowd as HOA members realized they had been systematically defrauded for years. Karen jumped to her feet, screaming, "Those documents are fabricated." Exactly the reaction I had hoped for. Her perfect composure cracked for the first time. Mascara ran down her face as she gestured wildly at the screen. The woman who had terrorized an entire community for months was melting down in public. Then came the environmental evidence that turned outrage into fury. Before and after photos of my poisoned well and dead cattle filled the screen. EPA test results revealed contamination levels 50 times the legal limit. Video footage showed illegal dumping from Clearwater Meadows construction sites, with Brad clearly directing operations. Families who had relied on that same aquifer watched, horrified. Karen's husband attempted to leave, only to find federal agents blocking every exit. The Phoenix connection sealed their fate. Video testimony from a Hispanic family described identical harassment, discrimination, and forced sale of their generational farm. Newspaper archives confirmed this was Karen's systematic criminal enterprise, not an isolated property dispute. Political corruption evidence brought the house down. Documents showed a $25,000 bribe to the county commissioner. Emails proved the judge's financial ties to Karen's development company. Phone recordings revealed Sheriff Thompson discussing ways to pressure me. The audience erupted, shouting for immediate arrests while county officials scurried like rats from a sinking ship. Finally, my MIC drop moment. The last slide. Question: what happens when you steal $340,000 through a fake HOA, contaminate a public water supply, bribe government officials, and threaten families? I paused, letting the words sink in, my gaze locked on Karen's test-streaked face. The answer was simple: you lose everything, and everyone watching knows you're criminals. Federal agents stepped forward with arrest warrants as I spoke. Karen screamed, "This is a setup!" But the only setup in motion was justice finally being served. The FBI arrested Karen, Brad, the county commissioner, and the HOA attorney on federal charges. As the charges were read aloud, RICO conspiracy, environmental crimes, wire fraud, bribery, civil rights violations, the crowd erupted in cheers that echoed across 3 counties. Sheriff Thompson tried to slip away, but state police apprehended him for corruption and witness intimidation. Local news cameras captured every moment, with a story going statewide within hours. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. HOA members apologized through tears. Elderly residents finally shared their stories of intimidation, and the town mayor called for immediate investigations into all county land deals. When regional TV interviewed me live, I stayed calm and dignified. "This isn't about me versus them," I said. "It's about protecting communities from predators who exploit the trust of good people." Justice tasted like freedom, and sweeter than any county fair funnel cake. The legal resolution was swift and satisfying. Karen and Brad pleaded guilty to 47 federal charges, each receiving 15 years in federal prison. Assets were forfeited, recovering $23 million, including Karen's house, cars, and jewelry. Crime doesn't pay when you face RICO prosecution. Every defrauded HOA member received full refunds plus damages, and environmental cleanup began immediately using the seized criminal assets. My ranch's water well was restored and certified safe by independent testing, paid for entirely with money Karen had stolen from her neighbors. My personal life healed faster than I had dared hope. The custody case was dismissed when my ex-wife admitted Karen had secretly paid her legal fees. Emma returned to the ranch with stories about helping her grandmother bake cookies while I fought the bad actors. We planted new oak trees where Brad's bulldozers had destroyed the old ones. Emma insisted on happy trees to replace the sad ones. Her laughter echoed across the pastures, mixing with the contented lowing of cattle, reminding me why this fight had been worth every sleepless night. Our customer base returned stronger than ever. Integrity Beef became our brand, with people driving from 3 states away to buy from the rancher who had stood up to corruption. What was once a struggling ranch became a thriving operation, capable of funding Emma's college education twice over. Watching the community recover and reconnect was a reward beyond measure. Clearwater Meadows was reborn. The HOA now had transparent bylaws and democratically elected leadership. On the former site of Karen's illegal construction project, we planted a community garden, turning poisoned soil into nourishment for families. Monthly potluck dinners brought neighbors together, healing the rifts Karen's lies had caused. My handshakes were firm again, calluses honest from ranch work rather than legal battles. But the most meaningful accomplishment was establishing the Morrison Ranch Educational Foundation using recovered criminal funds. We provide scholarships for rural students studying environmental science and agricultural law, run free legal clinics for families facing land grab schemes, and placed a conservation easement on the ranch, ensuring it could never be developed. Emma became our youngest volunteer, teaching city kids about ranch life and explaining why standing up for what's right makes a difference. The broader impact exceeded all expectations. Our case inspired similar investigations in 3 other states, prompting a federal task force to investigate HOA fraud nationwide. A documentary filmmaker approached us, pledging all profits to the foundation. Congressional hearings on rural land rights featured my testimony, and our legal battle established precedent. Fake HOAs constitute organized crime under RICO statutes. I remarried Sarah, the local teacher who had supported me through every challenge. Our wedding was held in the pasture where Karen had tried to build her illegal development. Emma, as flower girl, scattered wildflower petals instead of traditional roses. I was elected regional president of the Cattlemen's Association, giving me a platform to advocate for property rights across the Mountain West. Standing in the same spot where this ordeal began, I was surrounded not by destruction, but restoration. Our new home, designed with solar panels and sustainable features, sat proudly where the old one had been. Clearwater Meadows residents were now friends and neighbors, and Emma's college fund was fully restored, with enough left over for future generations. The wind through the healthy grass and trees carried the sound of meadowlarks singing again, nature's way of saying everything was going to be okay. The lesson was clear: good people sometimes stay silent when fighting seems hopeless. But when you stand up to bullies with truth and persistence, communities rally around justice. Document everything. Research your local laws. Never let anyone intimidate you into giving up your rights. Every family deserves to feel safe in their home and community. Here's my challenge to you. If you faced HOA nightmares or corrupt local officials, share your story. Sunlight is the best disinfectant for corruption. And remember, never give those who exploit others the power to silence you. Yesterday, Emma asked, "Daddy, are the bad people really gone?" My answer was simple: yes, sweetheart. And now we make sure they can't hurt other families. That's a promise worth keeping.